It's a pleasure to have you once again on the Backstory with Omobola Stephen. Now, on the Backstory, we like to share what has not worked and what will make it work. I'm featuring experts and professionals who are added to the topics of government and politics and other subtopics under this. Now, today I have Beth Mcdaniel and also Steve Mcdaniel, who founded a company that innovates paints coatings in a toxic way. Now, they have developed within that space a coating that captures carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The two of them are here to talk about climate change solution and also carbon removal technologies. Hi, Beth and Steve. Welcome to the Backstory.
Thanks, Omobola. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you also for joining me once again. I'm looking forward to a great time. I like us to talk about carbon removal technologies and also climate change, very important topic in a dynamic world that we are in. The first question I'd like to ask is, what are the top 5 things that everyone needs to know about the existing solutions to the climate change challenge therein?
5 things to know about climate change or about the solutions to climate change?
That's right, the existing solutions therein to the climate change challenge we have.
I don't know if I exactly have 5 things, but I'll tell you some of my thoughts, okay? Well, one of them is we need to understand the backdrop for this conversation, which is lowering emissions is one thing, okay? And that has to happen, and it has to happen dramatically. But even if we lowered emissions and we succeed at lowering to those amounts that are recommended by the International Panel on Climate Change, we still need to do something else called carbon removal. And that means that we have to actually suck out carbon or capture carbon from the ambient air, or we're still going to surpass those temperature, those temperature rates that we don't want to go past. Okay, we don't want to go past some of these points of no return, one of which is 1.5 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels. Okay, and we're already at about 1.1. And anyway, so carbon removal solutions, of which is the type of solution we're going to talk to you about today. I just wanted to let your listeners know that that's a subsection of climate change solutions that we're here to talk about, is that carbon removal technology. Steve, you had something that you wanted to say about.
Well, I always like to end up any of these podcasts answering the very question you posed, and there's good news and bad news. The bad news is like Beth mentioned, emissions are not going down; they're going up, and so we have to pull it out. But there are many things that people are doing, and they should continue to do them. Look at the value of solar panels on your house or your apartment complex, recycling, both anything you can recycle, especially plastic, and also trying to reduce your carbon footprint personally. So bicycling to work rather than driving a car, using electrical vehicles, using versus gas burning. All those kinds of things are good. But the bad news is that that's not going to do it. The good news is that there is a solution, and we feel pretty confident with this. And it's not just us. There's a lot of people working on this project, right? And in the X Prize and elsewhere, a lot of people are working on it. So I am very confident, and I think Beth would agree with me, I'm very confident as a person who's involved in this industry that we will tackle it. We will.
We have no choice. It's existential.
We will, and we won't stop until I'm saying Beth and I are not going to stop until we do. So what you can do as an individual, and what I hope every single one, like you who are young and vital, and you've got families and all sorts of plans in the future, what I hope you do is every day when you wake up, put that in your front windshield. That's your vision. I want a world, think this, I want a world that is thriving, not merely surviving, but thriving, because we're going to get there. And if you can just put that in your vision and spread that vision around, you will be doing wonders.
Absolutely. Now, still talking about the climate change solutions, I'd like us to talk about this climate change in terms of the social and environmental impact.
Okay, so any climate change solution or solution really to any existential problem, what you have to, if you're tackling a big challenge like that, then you have to make sure that any solution you come up with doesn't cause harm, or at least doesn't cause more harm, and so that always has to be measured. So you don't want to, I mean, one of the problems, let's say, with planting trees everywhere, which trees, of course, also capture carbon dioxide. And a lot of people think, why don't we just plant trees? Problem is, in order to plant enough trees to take care of the problem, we would need like 1 trillion trees, which would take up a land space about the size of the domestic United States. Okay, so it's not exactly realistic. And what it would do is displace so many people, right? I mean, and that would be valuable farmland that would be placed, land that people live on. And so everyone would have to migrate. And so that's not a solution that could work, for instance. I mean, everyone can see we can't just substitute the United States with a bunch of trees and save the world, because that's not going to work that way. It's going to be socially and economically, it's going to injure people, damage people. And so what our solution is, we haven't really gotten to that, but we have a solution where paint has algae and it captures carbon dioxide from the ambient air. And one thing that's really good about this solution is we call it location agnostic, meaning that we don't have to be on good farmland. Okay, we can, in fact, paint has some very special qualities, and that is that they're lightweight. Paints are lightweight. Paints adhere well to surfaces. What does that mean? We can go vertical. Okay, we don't have to take up lateral land like trees do. Okay, so we can design our climate change solution so that it's less impactful on others. Anything that anyone does at this point is going to take, we're talking gigatons, which is billions of tons of CO2 that have to be removed from the air. It's going to take a huge effort and a huge, lots of facilities and all that stuff. But we want to, we think we can design ours to use like otherwise not usable land and that kind of thing, using farmers, for instance, that already know how to grow things up. And we're growing up algae. So we think, local farmers. In fact, that's how we have designed our model for scaling up to 1 million ton removal, which is something you have to do in what's called a life cycle analysis. And what we've done is, we modeled that in Africa, actually in the Great Rift Valley, and we would utilize the local farmers there, because who knows better how to grow things in that area, which is a good area for us to be in, than the locals. So we would definitely have an eye towards, enhancing any community that we went in with a solution and making sure that we built it up rather than took away something valuable that they needed.
I'd add that is, there's really nobody better than farmers. They know how to plant, they know how to harvest, they know how to fertilize, they know how to water, they know how to transport, they know how to get it to market. They know this. You don't have to teach them anything. They know this. All you have to do is give them the tools. And what we're hoping is, especially at places where small farms might be the predominant, Africa and these places where maybe small families or even individuals, women in particular, could run a very small facility and could make, a decent living with it by just carbon out of the air.
All right, Steve, can you tell me a bit about your technology?
Is that a question to me? I'm sorry.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Can we talk about that? Beth put it very well. What we are in the business of and have been for a very long time is making paint. And when the question became in 2018, when the existential nature of this problem became more obvious, we asked, how is it, and we always look to nature as our guide, how is it that nature handles huge amounts of carbon every year? Well, it's called the carbon cycle. Okay. Well, how does nature do that? Here's how it does it primarily. It uses trees and grass and things like that. But primarily, nature uses very thin layers of microalgae little bitty microbial algae, they're bacteria as well as algae, and it spreads them over every single surface that it can possibly spread them on. So that's what we decided we had to do. Well, the way we knew to do that is paint. It's thin. We can put it on many, many, many different surfaces. And the only question was, can we make algae grow and photosynthesize in a paint? And thank goodness, after about a year, we proved that we could. And right now the paint is ready to go.
Beth, your thoughts on this?
My what?
Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, no, I mean, it's absolutely right. Now, so we have a paint, that's our business. That's our day job, right? Is we put stuff into paint, naturally occurring things in nature that have some sort of functionality. We put those things into paint to derive functionality on a surface. And that's what we've been doing usually with things like peptides and enzyme biomolecules that in nature have some sort of functionality. And then we get that, we put that in a paint, and then we derive that functionality. And what's great about them is their nature, they're naturally occurring. They're all around you right now. They're safe and non-toxic to humans. So that's another thing that we achieve in this paint business. But like Steve said, when we were struck by the enormity and the urgency of climate change in that 2018 report, I mean, we within a week, we'd gone to our team and we had said, look, we've got to put all of our minds to this. And Stephen had this idea for some time. And after noticing what the way lichen are in nature. So that's where he got the idea. He stole it from nature. And, lichen, when you're wandering through the forest or whatever, and you see lichen on a rock, they can be all different colors. They're really thin. They adhere real well to the surface of that rock. You can't even scrape it off, right? Well, that's kind of like paint, and he thought, wow, lichen is kind of like paint. Let's look closer at how lichen do it. And the way that lichen does it, and actually I'm going to divert to my scientist husband, and he can tell you more if you want to hear more about lichen, but that is the natural organism from which this paint was designed. Steve, you want to tell him how we did it with lichen and the fungus?
Well, if you don't mind, Beth, if there's any way you could pop up a slide with a cross-section of a lichen, it'd make a lot more sense. But as Beth said, lichen, it turns out that they're made up of two organisms at a minimum. They're made up of a fungus that has captured and is maintaining another organism called microalgae, usually cyanobacteria. And essentially, the fungus farms these microbacteria, these photosynthetic bacteria, and it does so by placing them in places where there's plenty of sunshine, but not too much UV, where there's plenty of moisture, but not too much moisture, plenty of micronutrients, all those things the lichen brings to the algae, and the algae very happily then photosynthesize and deliver back to the fungus food, basically in the form of glucose or mannose. Those are sugars. And it goes on for a very long time. There are lichen that are tens of thousands of years old. I better correct myself. We know about lichen that are thousands of years old. The same organs, the same culture is many hundreds and many hundreds of years old. And so it goes on and goes on and goes on. How can we do that? Can we do the same thing that lichen does, using the paint to substitute for the fungus, and then putting in there algae that will grow inside that paint? And we were successful. And like I said, the paint is ready.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Beth and Steve, for that insight. I'd like us to talk about the current technologies that have existed or is existing, which has a massive impact on climate change. Tell me, why are we not hearing anything about that?
Well, okay, that's interesting that's a very interesting question and very observant, because what you're hearing a lot about probably is companies maybe that want to, and maybe even governments that are requiring companies to to lower their emissions. Okay. And so that's mitigation. Lowering emissions, like I said at the beginning, has to happen. Okay. But it's still not enough. We still have to do carbon removal. So there are a lot of people working on carbon removal. But there's some companies that have people do know about. There's one called Climeworks, for instance. They're doing really good work. They use a completely different technology. It's called they're either a sorbent or a solvent technology, but they are now capturing about 4,000 tons a year. And that means when we talk about capturing CO2, it's not just capture. You have to capture it and what's called sequester it, or make sure that it's not re-emitted into the atmosphere for at least 100 years. Okay. And that's what they call durable sequestration. So Climeworks is doing that, but they're doing it at 4,000 tons. And really what we have is about 40 billion tons that we need to be removing, that we're emitting into the atmosphere. We need, like the IPCC from the UN recommends that I think we have to start capturing 2 to 10 billion tons annually until 2030. Well, we're at 4,000. Okay. And there's some more. Okay. But some of the technologies also that you hear about are capturing carbon dioxide, but they're not sequestering it, is the thing. They're using it for other things. Okay. They might be even using it to push underground and push out more oil, because that is a way carbon dioxide has been used in the past, is to help push out oil. So they capture carbon dioxide and then they push out more oil. So that's not what we call a net negative situation. They're not pulling down more CO2 than the process is emitting. And so in order for it to be a viable carbon removal technology, there has to be a net negative. It has to be more carbon dioxide is removed by the process than is emitted by the process. And so that's what you hear about. There's some really good carbon capture technologies, but they're not always carbon negative.
And I would just add to what Beth said, is that that bespeaks very clearly that the approach we have to take has to be scalable. It has to go from the scale that we're presently out at in the thousands of tons to being able to capture billions of tons. There's a huge difference. That's 3 zeros versus 6 zeros versus 9 zeros. I mean, it's a big, big, big difference. You have to be scalable.
Okay, so now we talk about climate change. Now we want to talk about the carbon footprint. What are some of the important things that we need to start doing now in order to minimize the carbon footprint?
Well, Steve mentioned a few of those earlier. On an individual level, keep on doing those things you're doing, recycling, get solar panels, drive an electric car if it's possible. Hopefully we're going to get to a point where we have this carbon capture coatings in modules. In modules for individuals. We're starting out with facilities of these things. Okay. And so that's how we're launching into the commercial space, is there's going to be big facilities of this, and they'll probably be alongside these like industrial emitters. But what we're aiming for, and not in too distant future, would be to take these modules that have a whole bunch of carbon capture coatings on surfaces within just like a plastic module for individual use, like where you could put it in your backyard. And that is going to take some coordination, like with the cities and stuff like that, because it might be like there would be a kind of recycling thing for everyone to remove their carbon capture coating sheets and send them back so we could sequester them. And, it might involve more than us just innovating that paint, which the paint is already innovated, but, the module for individual use. And so, hopefully that will be something that people can do, and they'll be able to measure molecule for molecule how much carbon dioxide they've pulled down from their, from the ambient air to lower their carbon footprint.
And I might just add that it's really on an individual per individual basis. It's really not maybe as difficult as you might think. On average, humans around the 7 or 8 billion of us on the planet average about 4 tons per year that we emit. In the well-developed countries, it's much higher, upwards of the United States, say up 16 tons per year. So you're responsible for trying to pull that down. I mean, you could be responsible. What Beth is saying, and she's as right as she can be. At first, we'll be looking at industrial situations, but we hope very quickly to get to where you or anybody else can actually mitigate their own CO2 to the tune of 4 to 16 tons per year. That's what we hope.
Sure. Tell me, the both of you, why are you an expert in this field? Can you share a bit about that with my audience?
Why are we doing this?
Yes, you like to share your expertise with my audience. Why are you an expert?
Well,
I can.
Steve.
My wife, I'm a scientist, but my wife has been a lifelong philanthropist and an activist, and she taught me how important doing these kinds of things are, even when you're making money, even when you're working. And so we're taking her lead. She is our president, and there's a reason for that. And she's just good at what she does, and she's been doing it a long time.
Good to know.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you once again, Beth and Steve, for your thoughts on today's show, talking about climate change and carbon removal technologies. Do you have any projects in the pipeline you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, we are right now, what we're doing is we're at the point where we're launching our first pilot scale facility. It's going to happen in Tracy, California, about an hour away from San Francisco. And so watch for that in the news. It'll come up soon, and we're going to start pulling down their CO2, and we're going to demonstrate how this could be a viable alternative to capturing CO2 and permanently sequestering it.
Oh, right. Best of luck in that, Beth and Steve.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
All right. Do you like to share your social media and use on your website?
You can find out more about the technology at www.reactivesurfaces.com. And that's surface, like the surface of a table, not service. I don't know how to say our LinkedIn, but we're also on LinkedIn. So I'm a social media. Yeah, I'm challenged. But you can find out on Reactive Surfaces website. You'll find out about carbon capture coatings.
All right. All right. Parting word? Any parting word you'd like to share?
Oh.
Any
Steve?
parting word you'd like to share?
Any patent work, Steve?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean it. I'm being very serious. I'm being dead serious, actually. If you want to do something, keep in your mind at all times, every day, keep in your mind that you envision, in your vision, you see yourself, your children, your family, your friends thriving on planet Earth, not merely surviving.
Okay, but what about patent work? She wanted to know if you wanted to share any patent work.
Oh, we have patents on, my law firm and Best Law Firm is a patent law firm. We don't do anything without patenting.
Yeah, so we have a lot of patents.
It's a pleasure hosting you once again, Beth and Steve Mcdaniel. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and your expertise on today's topic of discussion. I wish you best of luck once again in all the projects that you embark upon.
Thank you very much.
Now, if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of the Backstory, you can do so on any cross-promotion platforms or any distribution platforms online. And do have a great time listening to the show. Perhaps you would like to share disruptive minded conversations on any topics on the government and politics or the environment. You can send a mail to omobola.stephen@outlook.com. I'll be looking forward to having your mail. Come on, I need to let you know that we can be the change that the world is waiting for. I need you to stay safe and be good at that. So